Hello, I'm Alex. You've seen half of my slides anyway. I'm a data person, but I thought I should start with a bit of a content warning because we've seen some amazing stuff. We've seen, kind of deep ethnography. We've seen semiotics. We've seen futures thinking. Lucas has built the matrix. I said I'm going to talk about data. They said you can go on at the end. It's going to be pretty dry in comparison. I'm not going to lie. It's a bit specky, but it may contain 5 things that will help you defend great work. So look, and I'm from a media agency, the people who bought you this, and the people that tell you that your ads need to be 5 seconds long or less, or nobody will see them. And I'm a data person in a media agency, so it's now officially the most evil job in the world, which it wasn't when I agreed to do this. So I'm effectively this guy. So hello. But look, also, I said I'd talk about data, but who here hasn't been to enough data presentations? Thank you. Look, there's 2 golden rules of data presentations. First is they have to contain this slide, over which someone normally says data is the new oil or something like that, but data is mainly ones and zeros, and these ones are back to front and they come in a tunnel. And then you have to show this slide in a way that's about how technology is kind of inspiring change, as if this is what inspiration looks like. So look, I thought, rather than talk about data, given that the bar is set so low, I'm going to go double or quits and talk about maths. Because at least we can agree on maths. Maths is hard. Maths, as advertising people, makes us feel like the machines have won. And increasingly, maths is used by people of dubious virtue to make you feel stupid and to make you feel like they're clever. There he is again, with maths, evil and maths together. Thank you for making my life inestimably harder than it had to be. But mainly I wanted to talk about maths because there's no shortage of people talking about data. But actually I think there is a shortage of people talking about the underlying maths of what we do, the underlying maths of advertising. And I thought as a counterpoint to everything else today, which looks at how we can be more specific, more personal, deeper, more one-to-one, more human, I'd talk about the really big, boring mathematical patterns that we see in advertising that I think planners a generation or so ago used to know a lot better than we do. I think data has unlocked a lot of new worlds, but I think there are a few lost arts from a world where you had to understand the underlying shape of the maths of what we do, because there wasn't anything else. You were making your decisions as a planner more on research data that was often a fairly small volume, the odd kind of panel study, the odd scanner study, but nothing like the volume of data that we've got today. And actually, when we have slightly less data, that can make us more attuned to the underlying patterns. So what I thought I'd try and do for the next 6 minutes and 47 seconds is give a quick primer on 5 things in the subject of how to talk about maths and sort of sound like you know what you're talking about a bit. I'm going to do that via the means of 5 wiggly lines, which are my 5 tools. This one is called the cumulative binomial distribution. I did say it would be dry. You had your chance. The cumulative binomial distribution, or its friend, the exponential distribution. This is generally the pattern you see when you're looking at how many people will see my ads. So if you start at spending nothing over here, nobody sees your ads. If you're spending in digital, that can continue to be the case for a while. Sorry, Google. If as you go over here, you spend more, but with each extra pound you get in, you get slightly less reach. It's also the sales response that you get from advertising as well. For every extra pound that you put into advertising, you get extra sales, but fewer extra, if that's the phrase I'm looking for. So, number 1. Number 2, the beta distribution. Slightly less well known, loads of fun. This describes really well the distribution of things like how much time people spend using media. If you go, again, over here, the heaviest people in terms of media usage, although, And the lightest one's over here. Most of us are kind of, here, not quite in the middle. There are relatively few very, very heavy media users. Most of us are kind of in the middle. And when we talk about the long tail of light users of any channel, TV, radio, press, newspapers, outdoor, that sort of thing, they live over here. So beta distribution, good for understanding those people. Third, the negative binomial or the power law distribution. This is the winner takes most distribution. If you have read How Brands Grow, if you know kind of Byron Sharp, you'll be kind of intimately familiar with this. This describes things like how many times people buy my brand. If I buy your brand once a year is over here, and I buy your brand every day is over here, most of us are up there. It also, patterns like this normally kind of describe how loyalty effects or kind of brand market share effects kind of building a population as well. There you tend to get a very few number of players with a lot of wins and a long tail. When we talk about the long tail, that's the long tail. This one's an S-curve, the clues in the name. It describes how trends build in a population, particularly over time. It does a really, really good job of that. Basically, things start slowly, then they get faster, then you run out of people who haven't done them. So you look at things like technology adoption over time. That's what that looks like. If you stick 3 of these on top of each other, you've got the 3 horizons model, and you're very clever, and you can go and work for McKinsey. If you want. And lastly, the normal distribution. It's called the normal distribution because it's everywhere, and it looks a bit rude. This is a good model for all sorts of things. The heights of people in this room are probably normally distributed. Your commutes here were probably normally distributed. Most of you are somewhere in the middle. The peak is the average. It also roughly describes how well most ads work, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. You've been very patient while I've been doing this kind of dry math stuff, and often people get a bit annoyed with the underlying maths of advertising or feel like it's taking away something from our discipline and from how we work. Because all of us, as planners, as creative people, as people who care about what we do, want to beat the odds. We want to be better than the average. We don't want to feel like the work that we do conforms to a pattern. But I think in order to beat the odds, you've got to know the odds. You've got to know the odds of doing something extraordinary. You've got to know that they're stacked against you. And you've got to be able to take other people on that journey with you. Let's go back to the normal distribution. You want your ad to be here. There are loads and loads of ads that are okay in terms of their, the sales response or the effectiveness response you get from them. There are a few really bad ones. There's a few really good ones. You want to be up here, winning awards, being famous, being in Cannes, winning at the IPA, that kind of thing. It's not easy to do, and it's not easy to sell. Work that lives up here is disproportionately hard to sell, which is probably why most ads kind of end up here, in the middle of the normal distribution. The reason I've shown you these 5 wiggly lines is A, I wanted to bore you with some maths, but B, actually I feel like these are a good kit for you to have as planners as a defense mechanism against ending up in the middle. And here's why. You can use each of these to make an argument for not doing boring, bland, forgettable work. Because when it comes to ads, most are average. They follow the normal distribution. When it comes to the people who look at your ads or your campaigns, lots of them are light. Most people aren't paying a huge amount of attention. When it comes to the results that you get from your advertising, when it comes from the market that you operate in, most gains are unequal. Most markets, to some extent, are winner takes all or winner takes most. When it comes to your media strategies or your sales strategies, headroom is limited. It's very easy to do the same thing again and again and hope that you will continue to get the same results. Mathematically, you won't. And lastly, the S-curve. It's a reminder that change takes time. If you're trying to challenge any of these other things or challenge your client's position on any of these curves, which is really what you're doing when you're doing advertising, you have to recognize that there's an investment in changing conversations, in changing perceptions, in changing culture that takes time. So 5 wiggly lines, 5 tools. And the reason I show them is because they speak back to something that you don't need me to tell you, which is that great work is worth fighting for. We want to fight for it as planners. It's our job as planners to fight for it. What I hope these 5 things do, in some ways, when you're talking to people who don't have the natural instinct for it that you might have, is give you some tools that you can use to start fighting with. That's it. Thank you very much.